Hey, what's going guys? It's your boy Stravens. It's been a minute since I put up a video, so I thought I'd make a quick little one here with the DLC Awakening coming up shortly in a couple of days. So this gameplay which I'm going to be talking over is a diamond camo gameplay for an assault rifle. I realized that I haven't really put on a assault rifle based diamond camo gameplay, so here's one, my first one, and it's obviously with one of the best assault rifles in the game, which is the KN-44. Now that's all I'm going to be saying about this gameplay. I want to jump into the DLC content and my thoughts on whether you should buy the DLC, whether you should wait for it, or how do you move forward from here. So here's what I think personally. Now right off the bat, if you play Call of Duty a lot, when I say a lot, I mean if you play Call of Duty probably 15-20 hours a week or more, then it absolutely makes sense for you to buy the DLC content, because you got to keep in mind that it's going to freshen your perspective on the game. It's going to give you different snapshots on the game, and obviously the amount of maps you're going to be getting on the game is going to be increased by 3 or 4. So from that perspective, especially if you play it so much, it absolutely makes sense for you to buy the game and buy the DLC content. Now, the second thing which comes to my mind is, especially if you're a zombies player. Now, this, keep in mind, doesn't apply to me because I don't really play zombies, and I honestly don't even play the campaign as much. So, for me, if you think about it, especially the way Treyarch's been designing the zombie content, where they're stitching the stories across the DLC, it would absolutely make sense, especially if you're a big-time zombies player, you play zombies a lot. It would absolutely make sense for you to go ahead and buy the content, because obviously it's going to stitch through the story and bring a particular section of the story to closure to you, and it makes sense from that perspective to buy the game. Now, the third point which I want to make is a little controversial. Now, controversial in the sense that it applies to a PS4 and an Xbox perspective. Now, I feel that if there is fresh new content out there, and if the PS4 gets the content 30 days earlier, I would say absolutely go for buying the DLC content if you answered yes to at least one of the top two questions. Because honestly, by the time if you're, let's say you're an Xbox player and you wait for the content of the game to be out and it's really 30 days delayed, and you look at all your friends and the gameplays which are out there, because people like to release content almost instantaneously as it's out, I think it freshens, it kind of stalens the or makes the content a little stale for you. So if you're a PS4 player, I feel that it gives you an extra incentive to go ahead and buy the content, because you simply get it at least a month earlier. So again, this is my personal opinion. I don't really want to start any controversy about this. It's just what I think, my 2 cents. Now, if you answered yes to the questions which I stated above, or whatever I stated above, I would say buy the season pass, because you're at least going to be saving $5 or $10, and it absolutely makes sense for you at that point to go for the season pass. Now, one thing I want to disclose is I didn't buy any DLC content previously over the last two games, because I just felt that because I was a PS4 player, that the fact that Xbox had this privilege of getting the content 30 days earlier, and by then the game was pretty stale in terms of my perspective. I didn't really go ahead and buy the DLC content, especially on Advanced Warfare, and honestly on GOATs I just bought maybe one DLC piece, and that's what I thought. I thought it was going to be stale at that point, and really gave me zero incentive from that perspective to buy the game. So there you go. That's my statements for the pros. Now coming to the cons. Now the cons, you really think about it from an economic perspective, a lot of these game production companies are really milking this game. Before, all these maps came in one batch and you paid about whatever, $45 to $60 for these games. But now they're trying to milk you for all you got and really stretch out this content. And if you really think about it, especially if you're someone who buys the entire DLC and especially spends money money on supply drops, you can easily drop $150 to $200 on just one game, which for me just sounds absolutely insane. If you only play Call of Duty and then Call of Duty is the only game for you, absolutely go for it, man. Have at it, Hoss. I mean, that absolutely makes sense then that you drop that kind of money. But if you're someone who likes to sample a lot of games, then you really need to think about the economics of the situation. Maybe you can afford to buy maybe 3 or 4 games, then you want to think about that kind of content. Now, the second con I want to put out there again rolls into the first con, one of the first pros which I talked about, which is from the PS4 side. I said that if you had the PS4, it absolutely makes sense for you to get the DLC content because you get it 30 days earlier. Now, when you switch it back to the Xbox side, now I think the reverse. If you own an Xbox, do you really have that kind of incentive? Because the game is out for 30 days. People are already playing it a lot. You have a bunch of YouTubers throwing out a bunch of videos on the DLC content, and honestly, you like to play it fresh. I know there's for some people it doesn't matter, but there are other people it does matter because stale content isn't really apt. It doesn't really freshen your perspective on the game. So that's really what I think from a cons perspective. The economics on one side, where I feel these game-based production companies are really looting a lot of these users and a lot of these gamers out of valuable money, which honestly could go elsewhere. And the second thing, like I said, the Xbox versus PS4. Do you really want to buy stale content once it's out? Anyway, that was my pros and cons take on these games. Again, I hope this helped you out a little bit in terms of making a decision when it comes to buying the game and the DLC content, guys. All right, see you in another video. Cheers, guys.